Thank you everybody very much for joining us here today. We are going to be breaking down the entirety of the OWCS finals that are going to be taking place in Stockholm here in just a week and a half. And joining me is Spectrion. Spectrion, we're going to be a little heated at times. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I have a couple of very hot takes, but you have some very good takes as well. So this should be a very exciting one.
Yeah, plenty of games to go through. I think let's just go straight into it. No point beating around the bush.
Yeah.
First game, Team Falcons versus Twisted Minds. Is this worth discussing? Twisted Minds have one one player who's of the international caliber, I'd argue, and that's Quartz. Outside of that, like, they're losing to Falcons. Maybe Quartz has like an actual life game and gives them like one singular map, but no, they're getting 3-0'd.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree in that situation. These teams didn't get to face each other before either in this situation since Twisted Minds got knocked out like pretty much immediately back in the major in Dallas. So I don't think there's any reasonable grounds to make the assumption they would win here today or honestly even take a map because I think at this point they're probably even weaker than they were at the major just a couple months ago. That's how I feel. But
well, I don't think they're weaker. But
do you think they're stronger though?
They're stronger, but only because at the last major they had their manager or something playing.
Oh, that's true. You're right.
So it's they've stepped up a little bit, but you know. But this is a Twisted Minds who against competition they like to be playing. They've lost to SSG 3-1 twice. See if they've even played ENCE. Nope, it's a third 3-1 loss to SSG. A 3-0 loss to ENCE. If they're kind of getting cooked by national, like a regional competition, then I have no idea why anyone would put them taking anything against a Korean competition.
Well, I got 100% agree with you there. So 3-0 seems like one of the easiest choices we're going to make. I think a lot of these first rounds are going to be pretty simple. 30-0, wow.
Yeah.
Really driving it home that this ain't going to happen. All right, one down, many more to go. So next, we got to talk about the next set of teams here, which I guess this is one of the more exciting matches to talk about. Toronto Defiant ends in this situation. So in this match, I'm looking forward to this. And I think this genuinely could, I want to say it could go either way. I think these are two very good teams overall. Toronto Defiant should be the favorites. Let me tell you that much. But I have faith that ENCE could take away a map, honestly, and maybe two, honestly.
I want to say, like, considering this isn't a fantastic meta for Toronto, they're always more of a dive team, having someone in, especially in a region where they're the only team who've got the dive comp unlocked. Obviously, Sugarfree's been fantastic on this Genji. Like, we've seen that historically. Obviously, someone's always going to be really, really good. But historically, remember, ENCE beat Toronto in the last international 3-1. And it's, again, a brawl meta. Vistola and Kevster on the Orisa and Genji is insane value. I don't see a reason why Toronto have improved enough to beat ENCE.
I'd say that's a pretty arguable point at this thing in mind. I think also Toronto kind of underperformed for what they could have done.
That's definitely true as well.
That's the biggest situation. But you're right in the fact that they haven't really done anything to show that they can play better or worse, for that matter. I mean, again, no one has yet to kind of take them down.
Toronto got beaten by Energy Shock, like.
Right, but that's what I was going to reiterate. They haven't been beaten in the finals before. Yeah. They haven't been beaten in the finals, which, you know, still they have lost to teams like Energy, and I believe at one point lost to, was it Nightmare as well at one point? Am I mistaken on that?
I'll take a look.
Because I'm genuinely curious, because for some reason I remember them losing to someone whose name wasn't Energy Shock.
ENCE in the major, but Energy Shock has been the only domestic loss since they lost to MAT in stage 2.
Yeah, I was mistaken because Nightmare ended up taking Toronto Defiant to map 5 and then map 7 in the last thing for NA. So either way, honestly, I'm going to agree with you here, but I tentatively want to put the 3-2 because I think this could realistically go either way. We just have to look at history and realize that, again, not a lot has really changed since then, so it's not reasonable to make Toronto Defiant like in 3-0 territory. So we'll go 3-2 ENCE in this situation. I genuinely think that can go either way, though. I think that
I agree. I do think it's a close game. Obviously, I think there's more like evidence for ENCE to win, but I would not be surprised at all if Toronto did. I think it's just a coin flip, as it were. Next game, though, Space Station versus Nightmare. Again, this should be the other really close game in that round 1 kind of matchup. Again, I'm EU pilled. Again, I'm more likely to put it through as Space Station winning it out, but again, it really could go either way.
I think it could go either way. I have a certain likeness towards Nightmare. I think they were a very underrated team going into the final thing of NA. And I think they could get really far in here if they kind of get honestly the right teams to go against. That's the biggest thing of all, because this would be a different story if we were talking about them running into Team Falcons or Crazy Raccoons. I think the choice would be pretty simple after that point. But I think them being able to beat Space Station is a very legitimate and honestly based argument, to be honest, because Nightmare is just one of those teams that can just rise far above expectations.
They're definitely a good team. Obviously, their only losses have been to Toronto domestically and internationally in the Esports World Cup. A 2-3 loss to VP and a 1-3 loss to SSG by the looks of things. But that was partially before they'd had a full practice. So I do think they've improved since then. I think that looking at their roster, Infected definitely seems like the strongest piece in this meta. I think Infected's Arista has been incredibly impressive. And while I've been very high on certain other players, like Zera, for example, I think that it's not really his patch in the same way it could be Infected. So I think if Infected has like a life game, then there's a decent chance for it. But I said it again, but it's a Brawl meta, right? And SSG have been playing Brawl literally for 3 years with essentially the same players, same coaches. I find it very hard to imagine they'll be losing this out.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it kind of just bends that way, where this very much has kind of fallen into the hands of Space Station, and I think whether it is Hadi, whether it is KSA, because I think we've seen both play, but KSA has like mainly taken over so far in that starting spot. But either way, I'm going to tentatively agree. I again do think that Nightmare has a grand ability to punch up, and I think we'll have a lot to talk about with their matchup in the lower bracket, but I'm gonna agree in this situation. I will in this situation. I'm gonna give it a 3-1. How does a 3-1 sound?
Yeah,
favor Space.
That sounds perfect, honestly.
All right, perfect.
We've got another non-starter of a game.
We got
Crazy
another. We got another
versus
game.
NRG Shock.
might not even need to put up the brackets for the icons for this one, but we'll do it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not much of a conversation, but I mean,
Dark Lords taking on Lip.
Yeah.
The 8'9" gaming warlords. Like,
I mean,
guess we'll see.
I mean, I'll argue one thing. Do you think it is realistic, or I'll say possible, that they can take a map away? Not make it close, but is winning a map possible for Shock?
They lost to Fluffy Dreamland twice in a row. Did NRG Shock?
Yeah.
I understand that there were, to a certain extent, circumstances, but when you're taking on the king, you've got to be like perfect. And NRG Shock have been anything but. It's the freest 3-1 of our lives.
Yeah,
3-0, sorry.
Yeah, this wasn't a part to argue 3-1. I'm just trying to throw almost like a bone to Energy Shock in this situation. It's kind of one of those scenarios where it's like, you kind of hope they do good, but unfortunately they are just immediately thrown into the fire, which we'll get more to that later. But I'll tell you what, you know what? Let's, do we want to focus on the upper bracket stuff?
First.
Okay, let's do upper bracket first. I'm going to get these things set up, but...
I did not... come on.
What? I
got to set lower bracket.
What? I thought you said upper bracket.
I thought you were just spicing me. I was going to be like,
maybe. Do you?
I know it's crazy like that.
I'm fine going either way.
I know.
Honestly, we can get through a lot more at the bottom if we do the upper bracket first. So I'll set up things for that. But either way, Team Falcons, ENCE. This is a question where does ENCE stand any realistic chance?
Take a map, maybe. But it's gonna be realistically like a 3-0, 3-1 kind of spot. I think it's hard to argue that ENCE were going to be winning against Falcons. Let's see.
I mean, yeah. Again, you kind of just look at these rosters in the first place.
Yeah,
and ENCE is strong. Don't get me wrong. Like that is a strong team. My God, but
like historically, again, Team Falcons haven't yet to drop a map against any non-Korean opposition.
Yeah.
I don't see why they would start now. They've beat both ENCE and Space Station 3-0. ENCE and Space Station are only really scrimming against each other. I don't see how they can improve enough to deal with realistic damage, so I would say 3-0.
Yeah, I think that's the most realistic situation. Again, I don't think taking a map is impossible for them, but it's not something you would bet on. If you were on a betting sheet, I would say 3-0 is the most comfortable decision. So
absolutely.
We'll agree in that situation. 3-0. I mean, let's be real. This is just going to come down to the Korean show. That was if you went into watching this thinking it was going to be anything but that, you are sorely mistaken.
Wait, I found they've dropped one map. They've dropped 2 maps in internationals.
Ooh.
And it's 1 map to VP and 1 map to Twisted Minds. But I'm assuming both of these are pretty inconsistent, and I think it's not even worth talking about. But point is, they've dropped 2 maps to non-Korean teams ever.
Well,
They're not going to really start making it a habit out of it.
Yeah, there's just no way they just start performing that badly out of nowhere. But
Mm-hmm.
let's see if another team might start performing badly in comparison. Got Crazy Raccoons in Space Station. Again, this feels like one of those things where, again, you kind of have to favor Crazy Raccoons.
Yeah.
Another situation where maybe Space Station could take a map. Meta's kind of in their favor, but it's also Crazy Raccoons, and it's incredibly hard to go against them. But I mean, is there any world where they can get a map? Like, genuinely, do you feel the same way?
I think Crazy Raccoons definitely do have a habit of brain fasting occasionally and just like trolling. If Space Station are able to capitalize on that and also are just playing like out of their mind, it's a possibility. But also, just the kind of the flaws of both these teams are so separate. They're so different that I would be very, very surprised if even a map was to go in the favor. So I'd say it's like a 30% chance taking a map, maybe.
Okay, I could go with that. Just for a record, these two haven't played each other before. Back at the Dallas Major, they actually played in the lower bracket finals. I completely forgot that happened, but it was a very rather quick 3-0 in Crazy Raccoon's favor. So, yeah, history is probably doomed to repeat itself here. But I'll agree, 3-0 in this situation. Again, not the space station. That was gonna be a terrifying mistake. Luckily, I can go back on this, but now it's time to start going to the lower bracket. We gotta start kicking some teams out, and I think we'll get to Team Falcons, Crazy Raccoons. That's a whole argument. I kind of want to figure out this whole lower bracket first because this will be a little more chaotic. Maybe not to start, but either way, we'll get set up for our next teams in mind. We got Twisted Minds, Toronto Defiant. I mean, how do we feel in this situation, Spec? Because this feels like... Good.
It's more of a chance here for Twisted. I think Toronto... I think that NA generally going to be an easier opponent for Twisted, considering they like to play more of a mechanical based style, right? Where they just kind of just courts go kill essentially. And I think NA's more willingness to take these kind of ego duels gives a bit of a chance towards Twisted, but I think it's a very, very small chance. I think, especially considering how Toronto are just a step above kind of everybody else in the region, I'd be very surprised if really anything happened. I think we've got another 3-0 here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in that same boat. It would be pretty... I mean, heinous if the best team in NA dropped within the first 2 matches. That would be heinous. I don't want to live in that reality, quite frankly, where we have to go through that. I know NA fans are eventually going to be disappointed at Stockholm, but I don't want them disappointed on day one. I can't live with that. But I'm gonna agree. I don't think it's worth too much more of a conversation than that, quite frankly. I think the next match though is worth a bit of a conversation, to be honest with you.
Oh, absolutely.
Which Nightmare Energy Shock. I need to look back and see if this match ever actually happened within Stage 3 or Stage 4. I'm genuinely curious.
I believe it has.
But I want to know how you feel about this, because, again, this feels like a back and forth affair, but I'm slightly leaning towards Nightmare in this situation.
I would definitely lean to Nightmare here. I don't think these two teams have played each other. Nope, never have. So it's going to be new, definitely. Energy Shock have the advantage of having, I would say, a more competent Winston player, but not really in a Winston meta. I think that Energy Shock are also struggling with Orisa in general. I think neither Kellen or Attack are that comfortable on her. Attack's always struck me as more of not a Diva 1 trick perhaps, but somewhere close, and Kellen's always been more of a Ram Monkey type of guy, so that's an issue for them. I think that their main advantage is going to be probably like Tree and Ultraviolet on the side of Energy Shock, who I think are arguably better than their counterparts on the other side of things. Ultraviolet, I'd say, very likely is better than his counterpart, right? And Tree, I do think, is also just absolutely nuts, as well as having crazy flexibility. So I think if those two can have good games, there's a chance for it to go close, maybe even go in the favor of Energy Shock. But if I were to put a number on this, I'd probably say like a 3-1 Nightmare.
I think that's pretty realistic, and actually, it comes to mind. You talked about Tree. I believe this is this Tree's first. Is this their first international event? Like, am I like Tree is still pretty young, right. But like,
Tree's born in 2007, man.
I mean, that's why I'm definitely not, because I'm like, there was a time where again Tree.
He played in the Pro-Am. Is the next closest thing.
I guess that would be the closest thing, but that was pretty. I'm pretty sure that was still like
EWC. He played EWC and got 4-0'd.
That's right. That's right. It was on M80. So yeah, not the first one, but Well, on the bright side, they're not going to be in the bottom tier this time because I 100% agree. I think Nightmare is a stronger team overall with what we've seen and what we have before us.
Yeah.
Again,
Rip to our content, org. Rip to one of the
Rip,
few
Rip Shock.
Bush League teams still staying through, but like
Rip.
no crack pipe, no win. I think.
No, I mean we're gonna have to see some absolute cooking from Energy Shock to get a win out of them. But speaking of, they're gone. But we have to knock out two more teams now. This is a conversation. Space Station Gaming, Toronto Defiant. These are the fun ones because this is NA versus EU now, and the situation there. I think this can still go either way. I think it is that conversation, but I know you probably feel.
I think it could, yeah. Because obviously I want Space Station to win, but I couldn't really come up with an easy justification for it, other than they went deeper in the last major. But obviously Toronto went significantly deeper in EWC. You can argue that was because of having the hero bans. It's not something we can verify factually. We're not in the scrims. I haven't been binge watching my Commander X. I'm sorry, but it will end up to being essentially a coin flip. I would say this is probably the closest game, this and maybe the other lower bracket game that we're ever going to see. Like these round 2 kind of 3 matches, the ones we haven't done yet, these are all going to be the closest matches in my opinion.
I mean, they absolutely have to be in that situation again, because again, we don't have to talk about Falcons or Raccoons yet, so it's not as easy as saying anything is going to be a 3-0. But either way, in this situation, I'm NA biased aside, I am slightly leaning towards Toronto Defiant in this situation. I think they have an incredible ability to kind of get through this lower bracket. They might meet the brick wall at the very end, but I think if there's a team that's going to reach that top 4, maybe even that top 3, it's probably going to be Toronto Defiant.
I think there's a possibility, yeah. But also, if we're saying that that Ents are going to beat Toronto 3-2 in round 1, and considering Space Station 4-0'd Ents in the previous final, for example, I don't think it's entirely internally consistent for us to say that Toronto are going to be coming through Space Station here. Especially considering we're still in the same patch, exactly, right? Erisa's a little bit weaker. She's honestly still very much could be played. It's still the same backline, it's still the same DPS.
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't have a lot of evidence to suggest that we know for a fact what's going to get played, because obviously, casting Diamond Masters matches aren't going to give us a real indication of what professionals are going to play at a international event. But we've seen a lot of teams still trying to run the Orisa, still trying to make it work, and it still works to an extent. But I don't know. Genuinely, this is a really tough one for me. I think this is I think this could go to a map 5. I think it almost should go to a map 5. It's just tough for me to believe that Toronto Defiant can't pull away this win. That's where my mind is currently sitting, but. We have to bend on this eventually. I mean, could we agree? Could we agree to a map 5 at the very least? Could we agree this?
Yeah, sure. We can agree to a map 5. Why not?
Okay.
I'm just looking through matches.
Yeah, I kind of want to find out more because again, we have kind of seen as the stages have gone on for NA that, Toronto Defiant looks like a little more and more vulnerable as things have gotten along. Like the fact that they've almost lost to that Nightmare squad. 2 times over, which again, Nightmare's not a bad team by any means.
No, Nightmare are a fantastic team, but also considering how the kind of spending has been, considering how long Toronto have been together, the kind of support they've got, then it seems. I mean, there was that whole fora around it, right? They have the most resources; they should be the ones winning.
I mean, yeah, you should think that. Kind of rate another point. Space Station again, yeah, they did slap that 4-0 onto Ents. That is. I remember watching that game, but I can't remember if it was actually close or not.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
No.
It's hard to argue the Toronto Defiant point now. It's getting the path is getting more and more narrow. I do think this can go either way.
We'll call it a 3-2 to Space Station.
Yeah, I think we kind of have to in this situation. I don't want to see. I think Toronto Defiant can win this game. But
definitely.
It's again, that's going to be pretty much what we're saying for the majority of these matches is that the other team could win, but it's a bit more reliable to say that Space Station is going to be able to actually pull that win.
Ents v Nightmare is a fun one. Actually, this is a very fun one.
This is a fun one. I think we could. You'll never guess who I favor. You'll never take a guess.
A huge surprise, realistically.
Again. Pretty much what the points we've already iterated right now is that Nightmare was the closest team to taking down Toronto Defiant, and Ents unfortunately went out in that 4-0 fashion during the last EU in Stage 4. So, man, it's it's a tough scenario. Again, these are these second places of the last stage, respectively, between NA and EU. I think, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record for the rest of these matches, but it could genuinely go either way. But I have a lot of faith in this Nightmare squad. I think they genuinely can hit top four, and I think they almost. I think with the path they managed to get, I think if this is how things were to actually go down, I do think they can lock that top four in. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. I'm just thinking it through right now. I think Ents do have the issue that they haven't really had a consistent support line. Obviously, they've been kind of swapping between Scaripa, Kellex, Marsa, Ghost, Crimzo, as well as having an inconsistent like coaching staff with having who is it? What's his name? Gunba in Crimzo. Obviously, then coaches afterwards. Crimzo then leaves. I think the roster, the inconsistent roster of Ents, could mean they haven't built up like enough historical like accountability with each other, right? They haven't built up the same amount of fluency that maybe Nightmare have begun to have a chance to with a slightly more consistent roster. I really struggle to think of any sort of differentiating factors here, though. I think this is actually just 50-50 in terms of making a prediction.
It kind of is in that situation. I have faith both teams can, like, again, both these teams could go on a run. I think both of them have a very realistic opportunity to get top four. Like, even if this didn't go down the way we're cooking it, I think it's almost 100% a possibility. But, man, this is tough. This is genuinely tough. Like, I can see this going either way in my mind. I'm still going to favor Nightmare. I'm going to try to drop the NA bias in this situation. But
I'll let you have a little bit. I've been winning too much recently.
I think with what we've seen from Nightmare and their ability to kind of like really rise up, especially in that stage 4 and nearly take down Toronto twice over, I think they have the ability to go in here and beat a team that just didn't keep it close in their final. That's my argument.
Yeah. Okay. I think as long as it's 3-2, honestly, I'm not that fussed. It's like I said, it's so close.
It's entirely close. Now, let's move up to the upper bracket really quick and get this upper final out of the way. This is where we're going to be talking for another minute. We got Crazy Raccoons.
This is a coin flip.
Falcons.
It's a coin flip. I don't even care. It's a coin flip. Okay. So we'll look at the match history just between these two teams.
Yes.
Right. So last time it was Falcons won 4-3. Time before that, Crazy Raccoon won 3-2. Time before that, Falcons won 3-1. Time before that, Crazy Raccoon won 3-0. Time before that, Crazy Raccoon won 3-0. Time before that, Crazy Raccoon won 4-1. Time before that, it was 2-4 to Crazy Raccoon. Time before that was 3-2 to Falcons. Like, it's so back and forth every single time. There is no, like, I guess historically, Crazy Raccoon have taken, like, slightly more maps. Especially when they've had this org support. Before, when they were whack, it was a bit harder for them. But historically, I guess you could argue they won more recently, but it was over one map. In the tournament, they were even in maps. I think Crazy Raccoon are generally better. I think that Lip is somewhat struggling in this meta because I don't think his cast positioning is that good. I think Lip's style of play is so, like, standard, right? I don't know if you ever watched a Lip VOD, but Lip will stand behind his tank and shoot you in the head. And it works for him because his mechanics are insane, and this style of play is so, like, risk-averse that it doesn't work out. When he tries to take, like, brawl angles, then... Because obviously in brawl comps, your hit scan needs to take these kind of soft angles just to get a little bit of extra work done. Then it seems like he's not great at setting these up. The synergy between him and his support Chorong is a little bit weak. They do desync a lot of the time. I think flips with that, though, is the fact that Falcons... I think Chio and Filda are so bad at Brig Juno. So for me, it's kind of whoever has a bigger stinker. Because Chio and Filda are obviously world-class supports, but their Brig Juno specifically is very much below par, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's kind of the situation is, again, while we're not entirely sure of the meta, we seem to be very certain that Brig Juno is going to stay in the meta. It's going to be the main two supports. Maybe there's variation in there. You never know what teams are going to try to pull out when we get there, but if that is what it comes down to, I kind of have to trust Crazy Raccoon's backline a little bit more in that regard. But at the end of the day... Man, I almost have to... Again, it is very 50-50. I would lean more towards Falcons in this situation. Again, I mean, bring on the fact that, again, while it is 50-50, they won that last matchup. They managed that they could kind of pull it out. But again, we could literally flip a coin, and that would probably
Yeah.
be more accurate than our actual prediction.
I'd lean slightly more Crazy Raccoon. In stage two, then they got 2-3-0s over Falcons, and obviously they won the actual finals. But in the winners bracket, then Crazy Raccoon were able to win that 3-2. So I think there's a little bit more. Maybe we'll call it recency bias, maybe. But Crazy Raccoon have had a little bit more success recently. Obviously, they were able to take the previous major as well. But I do agree. I think it will be a coin flip. I reckon, so you say 3-2 to Crazy Raccoon.
I'll go with that in agreement because we literally have to do this. We probably have to do this twice over as well. So
it's going to be a 4-3 Crazy Raccoon in finals.
It's
hard to argue against that.
Every bit of evidence points to that being the case. But we got to find out who Falcons are going to go against first because we've got lower bracket semifinals right here at Nightmare Space Station Gaming. This is where, again, both the teams we predicted to get through in map 5s. I think, again, you can argue this being a close one, but
I think this is more likely to be like a 3-1 Space Station.
Yeah, I'm going to say you kind of have to favor Space Station in this situation. I think Nightmare have the punch-up ability. I think there is a realm where they can win. It's sitting in like the 25-30 range, though, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was speaking to some of the Nightmare staff, actually, and that was about the opinion they gave. So that is my gut feeling. I think, again, Nightmare, super strong team. They went for the very clever player, outsourcing EU talent, because that always works out. We just have a superior aura. They got Lethal, they got Admiral, I believe. But I think that Space Station, again, the tenure is so powerful, right? They've been a team for like 4 years now, I want to say.
I mean, we're coming up on, yeah. Essentially, yeah.
They like think with a hive mind at this point because they got so much experience. Like, I'm going to go check. What was the last time we saw these players not playing together?
I mean, it had to have been like late 2021, maybe early 2022, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm looking for the core of this British Hurricane team. Oh. Yeah, it's like British Hurricane playing in 2021. It's kind of that. 2020, maybe? No, about 2021 was when these players started playing together. So they've got 3 years of competitive experience, from contenders all the way through to OWCS. Like,
that's insane.
The oldest team.
You don't see teams like that together anymore. You
never really had that in Overwatch.
Yeah, I don't think there's another active team in existence that's like had a core together for that long. Like, I don't even think that was super realistic back in the Overwatch days. Like, can you remember like a core that was together for at least 4 years? Like, genuinely.
No. Part of like Shock was together for a while.
Shock was together for a while, but they've a lot of them left in like
Chengdu Hunters.
Chengdu.
They were doing the Chengdu thing forever.
Yeah, Chengdu. I think a lot of the Dallas squad was together for the last like 2 or 3 years. And
yeah, that's true.
A good chunk of them are still together now. But
you're kind of seeing this, like, they are the oldest team.
This is it, yeah. There's no argument there. So I have to agree with you. I'm willing to give this a 3-1. Again, I think Nightmare can make this very close. I think they 100% can. But I don't know. Again, it's something we're gonna have to see. It's just that kind of situation. But something else we got to see. We got to go right back to Space Station because lower bracket finals. How much you want to discuss this? How much of a genuine discussion?
I'm not winning. Hey, I'm not winning this one. I don't know what to say. It's probably going to be like another 3-0. I don't think they have a way of scoring a map. I think that, especially in this meta, I would say maybe the biggest chance they would have would be like maybe even a backline gap. Again, I'm not really a fan of the Fielder Chio Juno Brick. But also, I think that Funny Astro on not a Lucio hero is a crime against humanity. And I think he's not that good at it. Like, he's a competent Brigitte. But can I argue he's anything more than competent? Not really, you know? Or Landon off of Baptiste. What's the point? Like, they're essentially one-tricks, you know? And I think that's a huge issue. I think they are essentially outclassed in every role, unfortunately. So I would say 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree in the situation. It's again, kind of, while it's partially good for them, it's really unfortunate because, again, you have people that are just really good on specific heroes. And that would have worked if Juno didn't exist. Then I think we could argue a map in this situation. But,
yeah.
But I kind of have to agree. I still think they could take a map. I say there's like a 30-35% chance of them taking a map. That's what I'll say.
Maybe even say less, maybe like 20. I wish I could back them, but I find it incredibly hard.
If it's gonna happen, it might just happen in the first map, like
Yeah.
low key. If it doesn't happen, then I lose pretty quick
Okay,
faith.
to be fair, London Spitfire were historically absolutely terrible at control, so I'm not even sure it's that.
All right, well, we got one more to go through here, and we already done it once. So
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, this isn't much predicting of who's gonna win. This is us theory crafting. We're doing some fantasy booking here. How do we think this? How do we want this to go down in our heads? I mean,
I'm assuming it's going to go 4-3, right? I don't see much reason it wouldn't, unless like one team gets like mental boom and just collapses. Obviously, in the past OWCS Asia finals, it went like this to a Falcons win 4-3.
Yeah.
In previous matchups, it has seems to go towards Crazy Raccoon Ellis a bit more. Maybe that recency bias matters. Maybe it doesn't. It's on the same patch. I maybe want to say Falcons have a chance of going 4-3, but as we said before, this is essentially a coin flip again.
Yeah. We could do the very funny thing and just pretty much like copy paste what just happened in the H finals in the stage 2, which honestly would seem to be the more. I mean, I won't even say the more predictable route. Just history dooming to repeat itself. It's always a possibility. I don't know. Either the teams could win. Either of them should win. Both of them incredibly deserve it. They're clearly the best two teams that right now exist in the nation. But honestly, I'm willing to just repeat what happened stage 2. I think that's a genuine possibility, and I would love to see that history repeat itself.
Yeah, it's just gonna be it's gonna be a gigabanger. Honestly, I think that looking at this bracket now, honestly, it seems like we've got a pretty good bracket for some really close games, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the games with NRG and Twisted are probably going to be pretty terrible. Outside of that, though, then all like NA EU matches are going to be fun. Obviously, all the Korea matches are going to be fun. We should have a pretty competitive major to top off the year.
Yeah, I mean, genuinely, it should be a fantastic one. And I'll settle this 4-3. So if we got Team Falcons winning it all again, it could go either way as the bracket then disappears, as I need to full screen it once again because hard technology. But you know what? I like this. I like this a lot. I think we have cooked here today, and I can't wait for us to be in the second day and realize, oh, we fucked up. It's over. It's over.
Yeah, it could get cooked day one. This is how brackets always go, realistically.
Honestly, always. But honestly, a quick question here, because this point was argued a lot when they announced how many spots were going to be for each region. A lot of people talking about how Zeta Division should have gotten through.
Yeah.
How do you think, like, let's say this is what the bracket is. Let's say we dropped, like, who do we drop? Say we dropped a Twisted Minds, and instead Zeta Division. How far do you think they go?
Zeta in space of Twisted, lose to Falcons, win against Toronto, win against Space Station closely, win against Nightmare, lose against Falcons.
So you think it pretty much just follows the route that Space Station has kind of
run? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that they are historically a better team than Space Station. They beat each other in the EWC. I do think it's worth mentioning though that I would love to see for maybe next year, doing something similar to a CS style play, where in the Counter-Strike majors, then your region gets a certain amount of slots depending on how you did in the last. So obviously, considering Korea are going to have the best run, then they'll get an extra slot. If say NA has the worst, then they would cut one. If EU has the worst, then they'd cut one. Obviously, as an EU person, obviously considering it was a bit more success for EU in the last major, I want to see NA lose the slot. But realistically, I just feel like changing around the number of slots makes way more sense, because realistically, it makes no sense that Zeta Division, who got 2 finals in EWC, for example, don't even have a chance to get here. Even though they got a top 3 finish, same as like NRG Shock, Twisted Minds, who realistically aren't going to do any damage.
Yeah, that's kind of the situation. It's a question of like, is it worth creating like entirely more teams in general, like inviting more teams, like does?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because at that point,
I think if there's a budget for it, then I'd love to see like a 16-team major.
Yeah, if you do like even like 12 and you just get 4 from each region overall.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I think that's a really good shot right there. Pretty much give like the first seed from NA and EU, and then the top 2 seeds from Korea. Give them the buys and go from there. That could cook. Obviously, we don't know what. We don't know what next year's going to look like for competitive esports. It's probably going to beat OWCS, but just better done, I think.
I did hear a rumor that it was going to be similar in a lot of ways, but just slightly better in a couple. That's all I'm going to leak, though.
All right, I will. I'll get into your DMs later. I'll get all of that leak. But either way, this is our.
No, I'm not sharing.
No, that's messed up. Whatever. I'm not giving you the CGL script. Then I'm keeping that one to myself. I had to pay Headrammer a lot of money for that one. But no, I think we got to settle this. Do you have any last words? Any kind of bias? Any kind of feelings?
No, I'm just excited to go to Stockholm and meet people. To be honest, that's all I've got to say. Like, maybe a lot of faces who I've seen on the internet and never in person. So I'm just hyped about the whole event. Like, no matter how it goes, no matter even if all the games are gonna be 3-0s, then it should be exciting.
Yeah, nope, 100% should be. Obviously, you'll be in Stockholm. I'll be on the. I'm pretty sure we're doing the. I'm doing the co-stream with Mega. Yeah, I'm doing it with Megalast, and we'll see who else we can get. See who else isn't going to Stockholm.
I think Ray mentioned wanting to do it.
Yeah. Honestly, we'll kind of just see who shows up. Megalast is kind of putting it all together, but it's a we'll get there when we get their situation. But Petron, either way, this is our bracket. We stand by it. We give it the seal of approval. We need the thumbnails. But either way, thank you guys for watching. If you managed to get this far, I mean, congratulations to you. But either way, thank you all for watching. We'll probably do something silly like this down the line when there are more tournaments, and God knows when that's going to be for competitive Overwatch, but we'll see y'all then. So appreciate you for coming out.